Hey everybody, and welcome back to Hard Ticket, the show where we go to the movies expecting a double feature, only to find that both movies are playing at the exact same time. So, now we've got a hard ticket to choose between the two. I'm Jeffrey Bogus.
And I'm Tristan Moore.
And joining us today, we have a couple of special guests from the Adaptive Difficulty podcast, who I will let introduce themselves. Cameron, why don't you take it?
Yeah, I'm Cameron. I'm one of the co-hosts of Adaptive Difficulty. We're a podcast that looks at all the different kinds of adaptations that go into, that come out of, I should say, works, usually books into movies, because that's the most common form of adaptation. But we've done Clue before, where we're doing a board game into a movie. We've done Mario, so we've done video games into movies. So it's, as long as it's an adaptation, we can discuss it.
Josh, anything to add?
Yeah, my name is Josh. That pretty much covered it, I think. So we're good there.
Awesome.
Just did Scooby-Doo.
Oh, you just did Scooby-Doo?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. That is Scooby-Doo is a childhood favorite. But the show, I have mixed feelings about the movie. But the show, it's less fart jokes in the show than in the movie.
That is true.
Probably.
Yeah. That's a really interesting premise for the show and everything, adaptive difficulty. And have you guys done a Pirates of the Caribbean episode yet?
Yeah, it's out. So
it is out.
That.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you analyze the movie through the lens of the theme park attraction, right?
Yeah, it's a stretch sometimes.
Yeah.
But for that one, I made sure I personally turned the commentary on that the screenwriters recorded, because I was like, they have to say something about it at some point. So we got a few nuggets from doing that. But
that's awesome. Yeah, I got to check out that episode. That's great.
That's so cool. You can make a movie out of anything. And today's episode, we're talking about two movies that certainly made themselves out of something a little bit out of the ordinary. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Tristan to introduce us to our first movie of the week, option number A.
Yeah, option number A is 2005's Ice Princess, directed by Tim Fywell. It stars Michelle Trachtenberg, Joan Cusack, Hayden Panettiere, Kim Cattrall. This is a movie about she's a high school senior. She's a physics prodigy, and she decides to analyze ice skating to win a physics scholarship. And over the course of her studies, she discovers that she is actually also an ice skating prodigy, and she has a passion for it too. So the movie is sort of the tension between school life and extracurricular life as she decides, is she going to go to Harvard, or is she going to compete in ice skating competitions and make that her kind of future career? It's a Disney movie. I don't know if this was ever like a Disney Channel original movie. I think this actually premiered theatrically. So, but it does kind of have that veneer of like a really, goody two shoes kind of Disney film until it kind of gets real in the third act and kind of takes on a different tone. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm really interested to talk about it in competition with option number B, Jeff.
Yes, option number B, a very different movie, but strangely similar. We're talking about I, Tonya, big Oscar contender almost 10 years ago, came out in December of 2017, limited before releasing wide on my 19th birthday, January 19th, 2018. This is a movie starring Margot Robbie as Tonya Harding, skating prodigy. You might recognize her name because she was a huge figure skating celebrity in the 90s until an incident involving some broken kneecaps robbed her of her glory. So essentially, Margot Robbie plays Tonya throughout her life as she learns to ice skate. She meets her husband, Jeff Gillooly, played by Sebastian Stan, and is constantly heckled by her mother, Lavona Golden, played by Allison Janney. And it sort of peels back the layers on Tonya Harding, tries to sort of give you a psychoanalytical view of the criminal, because she did enter a plea bargain where she pled guilty to, I don't know if it was conspiracy or if it was actual.
I think what they considered it was hindrance of prosecution.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for knowing about it and not reporting it. Yeah. So she, spoilers to real life, but she ends the movie being forbidden to ice skate or be represented by the Ice Skaters
Association. Yeah.
Association. Yeah. So yeah, this was a pretty big movie when it came out. Got a lot of Oscar nominations. Margot Robbie and Allison Janney in particular, and Allison Janney took it for supporting actress because she is a force to be reckoned with in this movie. So
true.
Without further ado, this is Ice, Tonya. So now we're going to kick things off with our log lines so that we can have some ground for this similarity to stand on. Tristan, can you give me your log line of the episode?
I can, Jeff. I'm going to start kind of generic because I have a feeling we're going to siphon it into something a little bit more specific. My log line is: a gifted skater faces trials and tribulations in her personal life to prove she's the best in the rink.
Okay, that is...
We're starting high level.
I like it. Okay, who do we want to hand it over to? I'm going to go to Josh for our next log line.
Yeah, I might have kind of what Tristan's hinting at because mine's pretty specific.
Here we go.
A lower class girl defies her mother to find success in the world of ice skating, where she encounters psychological warfare. Also, a woman with the initials TH is suspended from the Olympics for sabotage.
That's what I was looking for. Some granularities. That's perfect.
Cameron, give me yours.
I had: an economically disadvantaged ugly duckling defies her problematic mother to excel at figure skating, only to be betrayed by a close, personal, trusted confidant in an incident, destroying a young skater's chance at winning the gold. Also, the second worst event to occur in national history on January 6th.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not a good day. Just don't make plans that day.
When they said January 6th, I kind of like my mouth dropped. I was like, do they know? How did they know? It's great. I will say, Cameron, real quick, I take issue with the ugly duckling thing because the Michelle Trachtenberg and Margot Robbie, it's hard.
I only said ugly duckling because that's what they call it in Ice Princess, is they call her an ugly duckling kind of thing. So
it's a Hollywood ugly duckling.
It's a Hollywood thing. That's fair.
All right, I'll take us home here. So two promising young ice skaters seek to skate out from under their mother's thumb and embrace the dream of competitive figure skating. Broken hearts, sabotage, and maybe even a handful of dopey men abound.
Nice. The dopey men.
We all touched on quite a few similarities. I will say, when we first met and talked about doing this crossover, we sort of deferred to you two, Cameron and Josh, to give us an idea about what you would want to hop on. And I think, Cameron, this was your idea for a matchup, right?
Yes, it was. And it was only because I remember they were both ice skating movies.
Now that we've watched them, do you feel validated in that choice?
Oh, I feel absolutely validated in this choice. Like, this is, honestly, it's a sleeper choice for me in terms of movies, in terms of pairings, because I had seen Ice Princess whenever I was younger, because I'm a Disney Channel person, but I did not catch on any of the Tonya Harding, we'll call it subtext that's in this film, but seeing it kind of back to back with I, Tonya, it's just like, oh, it's all right there.
Yeah, Tristan, you didn't even know about the story of Tonya Harding before watching this movie, did you?
I see. I knew the name Tonya Harding, and I think I knew Nancy Kerrigan, right? I think I knew those names sort of vaguely. I didn't realize the extent of the controversy around Tonya Harding. Actually, I didn't even know that this was like kind of a black comedy. I thought it was just sort of a rote, like skating, kind of like a Rocky or something. Like she just has to skate to be the best. Didn't realize that it was going to be like a talking head style movie based on real events that were kind of horrific and also comedic at the same time. So no, these were both blind watches for me, and they were both delightful watches.
Most people don't even understand how insanely difficult it is to attempt a triple axel. There's a reason why nobody was trying it.
You skate backward, and then take off from a forward position on your left leg, and then somehow
and hurl yourself blindly 3.5 rotations like you're light as shit, which I'm telling you Tonya never was.
land on the opposite foot on the back outside edge of a razor-thin blade.
The proof of the experiment's success isn't in the mumbo-jumbo of the calculations. It's in the actual improvement in the skating of 3 junior-level champions. I also applied the findings to my own skating, and actually managed to implement the experiment in a very rewarding and highly personal way.
Let's kick things off. We all mentioned, well, all but Tristan, we mentioned the mothers. We talked about mothers in our log lines. Oh boy, where should we start with that one?
You got to start with Allison Janney, right? She looks like she eats cigarettes for breakfast. Like she is like, she's awesome. Like she's just like the perfect archetype of somebody who's standing there, with one of her arms crossed and a cigarette up to her, mouth. She's got the 80s glasses and everything. She has like 80s glasses that have like a rim that like dips in below like her like eye, like her peripheral vision. So she can just side eye you. Like that is like, they're like purposefully made for that. She, for me, was kind of the standout performer of both films. And you said she won Best Supporting Actress, right, Jeff? So
yes,
she's terrific. She is the complete opposite of Joan Cusack's mother in Ice Princess, who is like
not the complete. I wouldn't say the complete.
Well,
opposite.
they are sort of like there's some forces there at play where it's like they're butting heads with their daughters, but Joan Cusack's mother character is like this. She's very feminist, third wave feminist. She's a vegetarian. She doesn't want her daughter to compete in ice skating because she feels like it's too girly and too frilly. So she kind of holds some resentment. I think she says later on, she's like, well, maybe, I might still hate the homecoming queen and all that stuff. So she's, she doesn't like that her daughter's dressed up in like frilly dresses and like being pretty and everything. So there's a little bit of like a force to be reckoned with there. But in the end, her personality is diametrically opposed to Allison Janney, who's just like, you should be thanking me for hitting you, basically, like abusing you and like for making you who you are today. And it's like, yeah, very different tones.
It's interesting you say complete opposite, because even like the plot is like in I, Tonya, they point out, I think when she's 15 or 16, her mom makes her drop out of high school to pursue skating because that is, I guess, the more promising outlook for her financially. And the exact opposite is happening in Ice Princess, where you're not allowed to skate because all you should focus on is school and getting into Harvard. And that's, just like the ice skating in I, Tonya, getting into Harvard is what I have coached you to do your whole life. So it not just personality, but literally like how they function in the plot is the same in that they're this stressor, but like literally opposite activities.
Yeah. Opposite goals.
Definitely, they both have an idea of what they want their daughter to do with their lives. More than an idea, actually. They've got like it all planned out, basically. But Allison Janney's character is more of a parallel with Tina in Ice Princess, who is Casey's coach and her friend's mom as well. So and there's a switch between the coaches and the mothers between these two movies too. So in I, Tonya, you have a coach who is very soft-spoken. She's very proper. She sort of tries to be mother. You get the sense that she's trying to be motherly towards Tonya because she sees just how awful her mother is in real life. Versus Ice Princess, where you have Joan Cusack's Joan. Her name is literally Joan in the movie, and she's trying to, she's mothering, but then there's Tina, who has what Casey needs in order to succeed when she decides that that's what she wants to do with her life. There is a scene in Ice Princess. So the first time I watched it was back in January, and my girlfriend showed it to me because she grew up with it. And for the first, 45 minutes, I was like, oh, it's a Disney movie. I'll humor it. It's silly. It's got high school bullies. So the dialogue that's just so ridiculous. And then there's one scene. There's one scene that happens where all of a sudden it's handheld cameras in a parking lot, and this actual dramatic real movie scene happens just right in the middle of this movie. And I'm like, holy shit, what the hell am I watching? It just sucker punches me. So yeah, we should get into the twists for that reason, because it happens right after I guess it's sort of a twist in Ice Princess, but it's definitely not a twist in I, Tonya, because it's what everybody's waiting to happen. And you know what? Since this is adaptive difficulty crossover, and these are movies adapting a real life event, I'm going to let our guests sort of talk about what is being adapted between the two of these.
Yeah, this is something we pointed out right before we recorded here, because the actual event, which we briefly mentioned earlier, is Tonya Harding's husband and some conspirators that he hired physically assaulted her biggest ice skating competitor, Nancy Kerrigan, right before a major event that also took her out of the upcoming Olympics, I believe. And you said broken kneecaps earlier. I think it was actually they just like severely bruised her inner thigh, and it kind of spun out to more in the media. And then it was a big question of, who knew that this is what the conspirators were going to do? Did Tonya Harding know ahead of time? The movie even questions whether Jeff knew ahead of time, but I think that's pretty certain that he did. So I, Tonya is directly about that. I mean, it's a biopic, but what I think all of us maybe were surprised by is that Ice Princess is pretty directly informed by all of that. There's, I think, the character you mentioned, Tina, her name is Tina Harwood, and she references being suspended from the Olympics for something she had done to a rival in the past. So I was almost seeing her as, Tonya Harding, if she went on to become a ice skating coach as a backup or, something.
Right, yeah.
And they're constantly talking in this movie about, you got to psych out the competition. Ice skaters are always sabotaging each other before events. And I don't think you get any of that talk or that as a plot point if the actual Tonya Harding incident had not occurred. So
Yeah, and then the actual event in the movie is that Tina Harwood's character gives new shoes, and it causes the main character's feet to get all bloody and injured, and ends up resulting in her like wanting to quit skating for a long time.
Yeah, the idea is that you're not supposed to ice skate in shoes you haven't broken in, which I don't know anything about ice skating, but I was thinking that as she put them on in the movie. I was like, I mean, I break in tennis shoes, like you're going to ice skate in those. And it also has, I Tonya shows the moment in Tonya Harding's life after the incident where she was allowed to compete in the Olympics at least the one more time or some event, and her laces were off and she complained to the judges. So it has some parallels there too.
Yeah. Specifically, I think Casey comes in is it fourth or fifth in like the semifinals?
Fifth, I think.
But yeah, and she's right beneath Jen, who is Tina's daughter. So Tina sabotages Casey so that her daughter is locked into a finals position, which the scene that happens directly after that is Casey confronting Tina, claiming that Jen and her brother Teddy, who is her love interest, who I don't even care about talking about in this matchup because who cares about that?
Can I say one thing about him?
Yeah.
Okay. He's the Zamboni driver of the ice skating rink, which important job, not knocking that. But at one point they reference why they are interested in ice skating, and he's like, I grew up loving the Zamboni. It was his passion, and then he got to do it.
You have to love an honest man.
Oh yeah, he's so simple. There's the scene where they reunite because after they have their falling out and everything, she's practicing on her pond, her frozen pond, and he comes over the horizon in his Zamboni.
What a shot!
That was the end of the Pride and Prejudice from 2005.
Yes.
Mr. Darcy is walking through the field.
Yes.
Except it was a Zamboni.
Also, is it safe to drive a Zamboni on a frozen pond? I feel like...
Oh, hell no.
No, we also mentioned that as we watched. Yeah.
He's skilled at being cars. He mentioned this. He can get that puppy up to 7 miles per hour. So
yeah,
I have to imagine he's driving for 4 hours to get to her house.
Yeah. The movie, it's true. The movie does go out of its way to establish that he can drive that thing out of the ice rink and show up at your house on a Zamboni, which is true. Which is such a shot. I mean, and hey, same year as Pride and Prejudice. People could have been watching these scenes in theaters right next to each other at the exact same time.
Yeah, Cameron, I love the he's driving 7 miles per hour down the road. Have you guys seen David Lynch's The Straight Story, where he drives a tractor across country? And I'm just imagining that movie, but with the Zamboni driver. That would just be incredible.
See, I've been behind several tractors that are going so slow, and I just know everyone behind him was absolutely furious with him.
But if it was for true love, though, they would have changed their tune.
Everyone behind a car is a psychopath.
Well, when it's a tractor, you can be like, well, I have to eat. But when it's a Zamboni.
Yeah, what are you doing here?
He's making the roads like less safe if he's like flattening the ice on it. I love like how they meet, and he's like they meet and they're like kind of antagonistic towards one another. He's like yelling at her. He's like, hey, no street shoes like on the ice and all this stuff. He kind of acts like a nut. And then they like, the way that they kind of connect is he's like, what are you doing? Like, what's your little science thing? And she's like, oh, physics and all this. And he's like, oh, like inertia, momentum, and drag. And she like looks at him. She's like, how do you know all that? Like, how do you know these words? Like these vaguely like physics words. It's great. That's like the Disney Channel stuff, like kind of coming out, like the really like cheesy stuff. But
yeah,
that it all builds up to that moment where he comes over the horizon, and it's like genuinely like a heartfelt moment.
It's so earned. So actually, Ice Princess falls into one of my favorite genres, which is when people can apply theoretical science seamlessly into real life scenarios, like the Drake and Josh episode where Josh gets really good at billiards and he's like, oh, it's just geometry. As same with the Spider-Man No Way Home. And he's like, oh, the mirror dimension. It's just geometry. You're great at this, Peter. You could do this. Like it's in the same vein, but I love it. I think I love it the most here in Ice Princess when she even... they're at a party and there's a guy on a zip line and she's like, oh no, if he weighs approximately this much and that zip line is right there, that means he's going to go straight through that window. It's just like, well, yeah, the zip line goes through the window.
Well, it's like one of those things that I think about when I think about this movie is because in my mind, when I brought it up, the only thing that I could recall about Ice Princess was she's a physics student who uses her physics to become good at ice skating, which is not really what the movie is, because she's also just kind of good at ice skating. She just uses physics to make her better and help her friends.
Yeah. And they even have the line where, her rival and her mom or friend, I forget what character she says it to, but they're like, oh, she probably figured that out with her physics. And Jen is like, the physics doesn't land the jump for you.
know? Right. Right.
Another thing I appreciated in the whole cheesy Disney movie, because our show did a Cinderella story recently, and this is something I griped about, is the characters didn't feel real, like they were so prototypical. But one thing I really appreciated about this movie is Jen, you think she's going to be just like a mean girl, bully, rival, and then pretty quickly within the runtime, she's pretty like amicable to Casey. Like they're rivals in ice skating, but they're not really hating each other outside of that. And I appreciated that they felt more three-dimensional in that way.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say specifically about Ice Princess before I try to kind of make a parallel between these two movies is, going back to the scene of them in the parking lot. So after Casey confronts Tina and Jen and Teddy, she calls her mom and says, Mom, can you come pick me up? And up until this point, her mom has been unsupportive. She's only just found out that Casey's been ice skating. And she comes and picks her up. And she just flies into the parking lot, slams on the brake, and she's like, get in the car right now. And then she tells off Tina so, like, cathartically. It's that scene. And it's not a cheap, it's not the same catharsis as seeing the Zamboni go over the horizon there. It's a catharsis where like she's showing actual parenting. I think she says, my daughter will succeed at whatever she does, but she will do it the right way.
Yeah.
Because, she's talking about, cheating and lying and all this subterfuge that goes into sports. And, she's just kind of asserting, putting her foot down here where she says no. And like I said, this moment, I was like, just the filmmaking changed too. Like I said, the handheld camera and everything, like all of a sudden it just became a totally different movie. Totally shocking.
I made my daughter strong, and you made Casey at home in a lecture hall. And she's going to do very well there. So you see, we agree.
My daughter is brilliant. She will succeed at whatever she does. But she will do it the right way, despite people like you trying to convince her otherwise.
You want to work with me a little? 23 students I train so I can coach Tonya full time.
Yeah, and I waitress full time to pay for your coaching.
Yes, but she's not my child.
No, she's mine, and I'm not throwing my money away so she can fit in with these little shits. You can dress up a pig however you want. You know what I'm saying,
It's
Diane?
not just about fitting in. It's about how she's growing up.
Lick my ass, Diane. She can do a fucking triple.
I, Tonya, hard R for swearing and violence, but there's something similar happening between the structure of these two movies, because you look at Ice Princess and it does feel very similar to like a, you know, a Disney Channel original movie, maybe a little bit elevated for theaters. And you look at I, Tonya, it's trying to be a little bit more subversive than your regular biopic. Do you guys think it succeeds at doing that?
For me, I think it mostly depends on where do you fall on the Tonya Harding and how guilty do you think she actually is kind of guideline.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it, I think, especially when you compare, and I think they bring this up in the movie, at least indirectly, when you compare other famous female figures from this time period that are just constantly bashed in the media and joked about constantly, like Monica Lewinsky, we have that to look back on now. And so I feel like we want to be more sympathetic to Tonya Harding's as a person already, because even if she did do it, she probably doesn't deserve all the hate and stuff that kind of happened to her after the fact. And so I think we already kind of want to buy into the subversive nature of this film just based on kind of how we're reevaluating how we're treating women in this country.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because my main takeaway as the movie ended is that I feel like this is a movie that's almost more interested in how subjective your opinion of the story became afterwards than it is really the story it chose to be about, which is why, you know, the movie's being told by three different people. It's not presenting itself the way biopics normally do, where there's not a narrator, so you don't have this like disconnection where like, oh, the narrator is telling me that. It's more like a normal biopic is kind of presenting it more as this is definitely true, whereas there's literally a tag before the movie opens that's like, this is based on the, you know, totally true, not at all contradictory statements of Jeff Gillooly and Tonya Harding. And I knew about this story before I watched this movie, but only because I followed the Oscar race that year.
Yeah.
That was really where I heard about it for the first time. And I remember part of the media cycle then is that, you know, Tonya Harding kind of came out of hiding for it and like saw the movie and was apparently pretty pro the movie, if I'm remembering right. And now actually watching it 9 years later, I'm kind of shocked by that.
Really?
Not that I think, like, because I think on a surface level, it's absolving her. But I mean, she has so many lines throughout the movie where she says, like the lace thing, after the lace thing happens, she says, well, I guess the lace was my fault, but not really. Like she has so many lines like that where she pretends to take the fault of something and then goes back and says, no, it wasn't. And I think the filmmakers are hinting at, is that what she's doing with the Nancy Kerrigan incident?
I definitely, so the movie goes out of its way to show you that Tonya cannot take responsibility for things that are clearly her fault, or at least she had some responsibility to take for. I think my biggest problem with I, Tonya is that the movie itself, despite presenting you with like the unreliable narrators from the beginning, the movie does seem to take a pretty hardline stance on how it portrays what happens. And that stance is very sympathetic to Tonya.
Yeah.
And there are reports that match that kind of imply that Tonya at least knew about a conspiracy of assault instead of just a letter campaign. But if you just watch this movie, which the first time I watched it, I felt the same way. I was like, this seems incredibly unfair. She comes across as sort of a victim. And, you know, victimization is complex. I do think the movie might be a little bit too sympathetic, or at least I think there's potential with the unreliable narrator thing that it's doing from the beginning to contradict itself in a way that's a little more tongue in cheek. I just don't think it goes in that direction.
Yeah.
See, for me, the movie starts out that way of wanting to present unreliable narrators because you get multiple shots of like the same sequence of them, of Tonya and Jeff and their marriage like being abusive towards one another.
Yeah.
And it shows both instances of like their version of the story. And it makes you think that they're going to kind of do that throughout the entire movie. And then they just kind of don't do that for the rest of the movie.
Nope.
Which is why I don't think that it's trying to, if it's trying to do an unreliable narrator thing, I think it's not succeeding in that way, because I think it very clearly or very quickly becomes, here's Tanya's version of the events that have happened.
I think what it switches into doing is the facts of the narrative just like change without being announced. So, because leading up to the attack, they're like, oh, you're going to mail letters for us. We're going to do like a psychological warfare mailing letters campaign. And then the goons they hire attack Nancy. And for a few minutes, the narrative acts like Jeff didn't know that that is what they were planning to do. And then a few minutes later, it's assumed that he knew it the whole time. They just sort of, the movie doesn't do any work to get you from one to the other. It just changes the facts of what happened and hopes you follow along. But I would agree, just knowing what I've seen of people's reaction to this movie, whether it worked for me or not, I think I'm more on the movie side than you guys are in that respect. But I agree that from what I've seen people say about this movie and what they believe about this case after they see it, it probably did fail in that. Like, I think a lot of people probably are more sympathetic to Tonya Harding, who probably did help hire like people to physically assault a woman, than they would have been if they hadn't seen this. So,
well, yeah, I get what you're saying, Josh. Like, I do feel like it's playing fast and loose with facts, and just the whole framing of the film. I mean, being called I, Tonya, like it's her story. And I was amazed at how much of the film is actually preoccupied with events that were apparently outside of her control. The film posits were outside of her control. There's large stretches of screen time where she's not even present, especially during the conspiracy and the assault and everything. And I was like, well, that's a little strange, because it is called I, Tonya. And it feels like if that's the intent of the filmmakers to sort of absolve her of guilt, you probably just focus on her during those events and she's just practicing for the Olympics or whatever. The end result for me is that I'm skeptical of what was presented in the film. I don't take it at face value that that's all what happened. And it makes me more interested in kind of researching it myself, which I don't think is the intended result, because I do think they were probably going for a more sympathetic portrayal of Tonya Harding. That's just not what I walk away from. I do feel like she was definitely like made a victim in a lot of circumstances. And this film is preoccupied with her upbringing, how tough her mom was. It's preoccupied with her class and how she was sort of made to feel othered by other ice skaters and judges and all that sort of thing. I mean, both these films, I think, are on some level preoccupied with class, because I think the whole thrust of the ice princesses, titular ice princesses conflict is, am I going to go to Harvard and like have a assured financial success, or am I going to become a professional ice skater and potentially not really have a very secure future?
Also work and do jobs and sell my research to fund that as well.
Exactly.
It's a big part of that movie.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think those are two kind of threads the films are pulling on. And yeah, I agree, Cameron, with what you were saying earlier too, about how we are trying to kind of reassess the way we view women portrayed in the media. And I don't know, we had that really interesting thing that happened with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard like a couple years ago, and there was like a lot of like facts and counterfacts and narratives and stuff. And I think it ultimately came down to, in my opinion, Johnny Depp having a great like legal team and like PR and all that stuff, and it made Amber Heard maybe look worse than she actually was. And I think so there's that inclination to want to view Tonya Harding more sympathetically, but I walked away skeptical. And it made me skeptical of the entire film just as a project.
I guess my point is, for the way I was viewing it, I don't think that's I don't think the filmmakers take that as an unexpected result. But I think the way it ended up being embraced by most people who watched it maybe would be surprised by that opinion. And you mentioned the first hour of this movie is really, I mean, kind of laying the groundwork to be sympathetic to her because she had such an abusive upbringing and then marriage. I mean, it's constantly showing the physical and verbal abuse from her mom and her husband, Jeff Gillooly.
Yeah.
And the thing I know, I was like, this is the only movie probably I've ever seen where after a planned, like a physical attack on a woman is carried out, it lightens up. Like,
Yeah.
because the first hour is so bleak. And then when they do the attack on Nancy and are trying to escape and get away with it, it kind of just becomes this bumbling crime comedy for at least a bit.
It's almost like a Coen Brothers movie.
It's like a
right?
Coen Brothers thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where for me it gets to, is that too much to, the attack just becomes the start of this basically punchline to the movie. And that is maybe where it ends up slightly tasteless to me.
Yeah. It revels in the absurdity of the conspiracy and all that, which it does sound absurd, especially the way the film presents it as these two kind of like bumbling henchmen who f it up. And
you can't, I mean, on some level, you can't even blame them because they play the clip at the end where the character that Paul Walter Hauser plays is like, yeah, I'm trained in counterterrorism and, and counter spy. Like,
but you're not.
Yeah, and he says exactly that in the movie. It's like, if I were making a movie and I had that line handed to me on a silver platter by like a newscast, I would put it in there. So, I mean.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting talking about the media circus around Tonya Harding. There's a line by Bobby Cannavale's character. He just plays a reporter who's also talking to the camera, breaking the fourth wall. And he's like, oh, it's a 24-hour news cycle. It was a new thing. We had to fill it or whatever.
Yeah.
Ted Turner pretty much invented the 24-hour news cycle in like 1980 when he founded CNN. Ted Turner, God rest his soul. And this is one of the first big scandals that happened during the 24-hour news cycle, but it was immediately eclipsed by the O.J. Simpson trial, which we even see on the television towards the end of the movie when Jeff is talking about like how his like 15 minutes of fame are over. And I think it handles that sort of thing pretty well. There's also that scene in Ice Princess where they're at the finals and Tina tells Casey to wear earplugs when she's skating because she's like, you have to tune out the crowd. If you are hearing them, cheering for you, you're going to get cocky. If you're hearing them booing you, they're going to get in your head. So you got to wear these earplugs and tune them out. There's a parallel there between what, like letting other people tell you what to think about yourself. It's just handled a lot more heavy-handedly in I, Tonya, because she literally looks at the camera and says, you are my abuser and I am a victim, which to some extent was true. I mean, she was something to fill that 24-hour news cycle, which I think is an important element to include in the movie. And I'm glad that it does.
Yeah. And that's part of that exact scene with where they show the O.J. Simpson trial on TV is why I said I think the movie's so interested specifically in how subjective what people believe about the event became. Because I think people are a little more certain now what happened with the O.J. trial than they are this event, maybe. But, at the time, it would have been the exact same thing. Basically, a he said, she said, we'll never know the truth media circus. Another thing with Ice Princess to point out on this subject is early on when she's assigned her physics project that kicks off the movie, she's told, make it personal, make it you. And she's kind of muttering to herself, thinking that's impossible. And she says, isn't the nature of science supposed to be unbiased and factual? So
QED, Josh.
QED. How is this quite easily demonstrated?
I don't think Ice Princess is nearly as concerned with, how everyone's life is subjective and all that as Tonya is, but it at least references it briefly there.
Well, I think the point of that line is setting up the future parts where science and facts are allowed to be personal and to a degree unbiased. It's not really until she puts it into practice for herself and she experiences the passion of it for herself that it becomes a successful project.
Yeah.
Also, I have to mention this somewhere. The teacher in that scene is making toast on like a Bunsen burner, and it's the wildest scene I've ever seen in a movie.
Just nonchalant happening kind of in the background, but specific cuts to draw attention to it. Yeah.
He's like, do you want a piece of toast? Is this like a normal thing to ask a student?
I'd love to see a full list of just movies that open with someone making their breakfast in an absurd way, because I feel like that's an underrated constant trope in movies.
Yeah, something this movie has in common with like Wallace and Gromit, I would say. Great.
And like Back to the Future.
Or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Anything with physics and wacky inventors.
Yeah.
Put these in.
Why?
Believe me, you don't want to know. If they fall, you'll get cocky. If they bring the crowd to its feet, you'll feel pressure. No one else exists. Go into the bubble.
It was like being abused all over again. Only this time it was by you. All of you. You're all my attackers too.
I will say there's something about Ice Princess. So the way that gender dynamics factor into Ice Princess specifically, it's a movie that there are not a lot of men in. In fact, you could cut out Teddy's subplot and it's pretty much the same movie. It's pretty popular in the LGBTQ plus community. And there are some like visual metaphors as well that reinforce that too. Like when Casey goes to school in her skating outfit, her vibrant, bright red outfit that she was hiding underneath really earth tone traditional clothes that she's wearing to her Harvard meet and greet. And she's specifically hiding it from her mother. That right there is like a classic kind of, it's so coming out coded, right? Like the magic of ice skating. It's like implied to be sort of this personal magic with the title Ice Princess, which, I mean, you know, it doesn't really make any sense if you're thinking about it literally, but when you think about it from what it fulfills in her life. And then you look at her relationship with Jen, who is sort of a rival turned lover ? Except it's a G-rated Disney movie in 2005, so we can't do that. And they have to talk about boys specifically so that you can put that thought out of your head. But it's so easy to read it that way. And it's such an empowering movie as well, because Casey empowers herself through what she's doing. Tonya also empowers herself through skating, but a little kind of sort of different.
Well, so for me, I was thinking about the LGBT aspect of it in the context of the final scene, whenever it's Casey's mom and her coach bickering back and forth as if they're like two moms.
Yes.
About like what's the best way to kind of handle their newfound daughter that they have to kind of raise together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, these are lesbian moms.
Yeah, you can't tell me that's an accident. Like while Unwritten is playing as well. Fantastic needle drop.
Yeah.
By the way, great needle drops across both of these movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, you look at the role that women play in these movies. The men are the ones who everything up in I, Tonya as well. And they're more prominent in the narrative. And you could argue that's why that narrative is much more of a shit show than the one we see in Ice Princess. Tonya is in an abusive relationship with her husband. And we see it in, I think one of my favorite needle drops in I, Tonya is Goodbye Stranger, when she decides to finally leave her husband. And you just get this continuous shot of the house as it's empty and Jeff is just like pacing around by himself, and Goodbye Stranger is playing. Like and that is an empowering scene right there. I left my husband and I'm going to take my fate in my own hands, and then class gets in the way and I have to act like I'm part of a happy family. So there's something here where these are both, would we call them both empowering movies?
Oh, one's like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
What does Allison Janney say to Tonya? She's like, you stupid. You don't marry stupid. So it's there is, I guess, sort of a cautionary tale there. Whereas Ice Princess, yeah, it's totally empowering. Josh, something you said earlier about Tina, you know, Michelle Trachtenberg's coach in Ice Princess, you sort of view her as like, what if Tonya Harding sort of had like a redemption arc? Like she got to become a ice skating coach, and then eventually, like, even though she's kind of hard edged and everything, eventually she softens up and is a good coach. It's funny because the way I was viewing these films was I watched Ice Princess first and then I, Tonya. And so I was thinking of Tonya Harding's character as like, what if Michelle Trachtenberg got so into ice skating that she ended up becoming like obsessed with, like, it was like a darker take on it. And so I was viewing it the opposite way you were doing. I was like, this is a corrupting force instead of here's a redemptive force, which makes more sense because Ice Princess actually takes place after the events of, you know, what Tonya Harding did. Another thing is by switching the dynamic between the coaches and the moms in this film. You know, in Ice Princess, at the end of the day, Michelle Trachtenberg has a good mother who is mostly supportive of her daughter and is at least amenable to the idea that she wants to pursue something passionate. She is empowered by going back to her abusive coach on her own terms and sort of being like, you got nothing left, I got nothing left, let's make something out of this. Versus the tragedy of I, Tonya is that, you know, Margot Robbie doesn't really have a choice for most of her, you know, the beginning of her life. She has to go back home to her abusive mother. And that makes it tragic. And there's nothing really empowering about that. She has to kind of go back to her mother. The empowering aspects come from pairing up with her former coach, who was actually very nice and properly motherly to her, or leaving, you know, her husband in that scene, the goodbye stranger scene. So you get one movie where it's like you find power in coming back to people and uniting people and getting people to sort of overcome all their hangups, which is something that Ice Princess is all about. Joan Cusack gets over her hang up with the homecoming queen, and you know, the Tina, the coach, kind of gets over her hang up with being a really tough mother, versus I, Tonya, which is all about you should leave the really shitty people who are dragging you down behind, and that's when you'll find some freedom. But unfortunately, they're like, it's like being in a mousetrap. It's hard to get out of those abusive relationships.
Though I will say the movie does make it very explicit at the end that, you know, Tonya does kind of escape those relationships and doesn't talk to either her mother or her ex-husband, and does have her own loving family. And it ends with the line that she wants people to think that she's a good mother, which is kind of her main issue that she has with her mom throughout the entire thing, is that her mom's kind of a terrible person.
Yeah, totally. And that's the end of the narrative. It's like that's where the drama ends, and it's like and now she's free, you know, essentially. So yeah, I love that that's how the film ends, with that line, because the driving force of I, Tonya really does feel like that tension between Allison Janney and Margot Robbie, which is so bitter and acerbic.
Now that you remind me of the ending quotes, I actually think that is where I got the most uncomfortable, because I was like, why didn't they tell me what happened to Nancy Kerrigan?
Oh, yeah.
Like, the movie is just so uninterested in her as a, I guess, actual person throughout
Yes.
it. Yeah. And to some extent, that maybe is kind of a gotcha criticism. Like, I'm thinking of when, you know, Oppenheimer was in theaters and it had critics who were like, you didn't show the Japanese as the bomb got dropped. And it's like, that would have probably been tasteless and patronizing. I don't think it, like, do we need scenes of Nancy Kerrigan when that's not the movie that's being made? But the end, it just felt especially absent that they didn't even include a sentence of, because I mean, she actually recovered from the injury relatively quickly for how much attention it got and how debilitating it seemed at the time, and skated more. So, and obviously, you know, ice skating Olympic careers don't last for very long, even when you're in good health. So I would have been curious to get one sentence about her, and I didn't get that. So,
well, you get that little line at the end whenever Margot Robbie is saying, look at her face when she gets the silver place medal. Look how disgusted she looks. Like she stepped in dog poo.
Yeah, and I think that was another example of the movie kind of being like, I mean, Tanya's not perfect, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, just another viewpoint of Tanya's, I guess, which, yeah, I guess maybe contributes to why she endorsed the movie at the end of the day. Maybe she's watching it and she's like, yeah, she did look like that. She did look like she stepped in dog poo. What's up with that?
That's kind of what I was thinking when I was like, why did Tonya Harding love this movie so much? When I mean, it's sympathetic to her, but it seems, I mean, relatively critical of her in a lot of ways. And then I guess I was thinking, I mean, if this is somewhat accurate, then I guess she sees that and that is her. So, you know, like, she's not noticing that because they got it right. I don't know.
Tonya, at least in the way she's portrayed in this movie, she has that attitude. Like, I think it's right after she lands the triple axel and she says, to everybody who said I couldn't do it, well, you, I did it. And that's just like, that is a sports mentality right there, or a competitive mentality prevalent across sports that a lot of people carry with them, and it does motivate them. You, that's like their reason for doing. And Tonya, you know, even if she cuts out the people in her life who have been negative forces, has still been raised with you as her motivator. And it's just like, it's something she's going to carry with her forever. And it's something I get when I see her getting the shit kicked out of her in a boxing rink. Like, you can't do that unless you have some sort of anger bottled up that you got to express by literally just punching somebody else. So it's thematically fitting, even if it's true to real life, that would happen. But yeah, it is like there is a level of discomfort there in terms of like sort of victimizing Tonya again, while also taking away from the victim, Nancy Kerrigan. There's something there that might be a little bit contradictory. I don't know.
Do we want to talk about the face swapping?
Be my guest.
Do you guys noticed it, right? Like the really bad face swapping on Margot Robbie?
Yes. It didn't bother me that much, but I did notice it.
I didn't notice.
You didn't notice it? Okay. Maybe it's just okay. So they were doing like lots of like one-ers and everything, and you could see like the digital seams and everything, and the face swapping, and I found it kind of distracting during sequences where, you know, the ice skating should really be front, because those are like the only beautiful scenes.
So this was happening during the ice skating specifically?
Yes, during the ice skating scenes. Yeah, because they had to use like a body double for Margot Robbie. And
how dare she not learn how to ice skate?
How dare she not learn how to do a triple axel? What the hell?
I think the triple axel was completely digital because there were only two people who could do it at the time.
Oh, really?
And they were like, the Olympics are coming up. I'm not going to do a triple axel in your movie and possibly injure myself, you know?
Ice Princess kind of handles it differently. Like it's just like suggestive, like cutting and editing to kind of make it look like it's Michelle Trachtenberg.
It's like when people play the piano, you know?
Yeah. Cut to the hands.
You're only seeing their hands or their face, not both.
Michelle Trachtenberg did learn how to ice skate for that movie, though. And a lot of that footage is her doing it. And honestly, it's not, I didn't get the sense that any of the editing in Ice Princess was distracting in the sense that, oh, they got a double in there. Like, I believe that's her in like most, if not all, of the footage we see.
Yeah, it's way less distracting to me compared to I, Tonya, where like I don't know, like the idea that this played theatrically and like the idea of like sitting in a big, like seeing it on a big screen and like actually getting to see up close her face as it was changing. Like, I feel like that would be so distracting compared to the simplicity of something like Ice Princess, which doesn't need to fool around with the digital effects to make it look realistic.
Yeah, Ice Princess also casts a bunch of ice skaters as in the supporting roles. Like Kirsten Olsen, the jumping shrimp, was actually an ice skater, and she was amazing. I mean, I really liked her performance as well. And Jocelyn Leigh as Tiffany, like they're all legitimate ice skaters. I didn't really find I, Tanya's ice skating scenes super distracting. And in fact, I liked a good amount of them. I liked the cinematography in that movie a lot. But I also liked it a lot in Ice Princess too, even though it was probably a lot less pronounced, I would say.
What I noticed about the ice skating in I, Tonya, whether it's convincing or not, I feel like it never really uses an ice skating scene as a moment of catharsis in like the way you might expect from a sports movie. I mean, even when she lands the triple axel, you know, it's immediately on to, well, I did it, so you, and like this sort of negativity of emotion surrounding it. Whereas you would expect more of a maybe like rise and fall feeling to it, where she's like super triumphant, everyone's excited in that moment, and then the reality of the crime and everything backs up the back end of the movie. And so maybe that's why it doesn't matter quite as much whether there was a little bit of distraction from how those were edited, because Ice Princess does need that. It needs a moment of she did really well at the finale and, you know, this is her calling. Whereas I, Tonya is so not focused on the actual like artistry of ice skating.
Not the artistry, but I do think there's some catharsis because she does talk about being loved and feeling the love for a little bit. But she also talks about how fame is really tough. And
I just maybe catharsis isn't the right word, but I mean, it doesn't have just that like, I don't know, sports movie, like final match success moment,
right?
Which I would have, in a movie structured like I, Tonya, I would have expected it to happen, you know, probably in the first half, and then the rest is crashing down. And the triple axel sort of is that moment, but it's much more understated than a standard sports movie.
It is more understated, you're right. And it does kind of take a turn after that because that's when all the conspiracy and stuff happens. But it is contrasted at the end of the film with her, mid knockout during her boxing match. It plays that next to her up in the air during the triple axel. And to me, at first, it was a juxtaposition. But now thinking about the way that Tonya Harding had this interesting relationship with, like, the you and the angst, and like she really gets power from feeling like the victim. I don't know if it's so much a juxtaposition as it is like, this is where she was here, this is where she is now, and it's really not all that dissimilar. She finds power and kind of being beaten down and rising up to meet the challenge. She gets right back up again. I mean, literally the end of the film is her on the mat, spitting out her blood and getting back up again to fight. And it's just, that's just her life. So yeah, no, it's something to think about. It's interesting. It was distracting to me, but I get if it is different. You're right. It fills a different function in I, Tonya compared to Ice Princess for sure.
There were a lot more ice skating moments in Ice Princess, and this sounds stupid, but I was like, okay, it's a Disney Channel movie. It's from 2005. How much effort are they going to put into like actual ice skaters and like actual ice skating events? But you spend a large portion of your time just like watching ice skating, and it's kind of like, as Josh was saying, celebrating the artistry of ice skating. And I was just thinking, if Disney made this movie today, there would be maybe 5 minutes of ice skating at the very end.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like that's where they put most of the effort, was into the actual like scenes on the ice rink and everything, which I appreciate the hell out of. I thought that was awesome. And the fact that the actors learned it, and like Michelle Trachtenberg learned it. And I don't know, and people have referenced like her character in that movie as like inspirations for their own careers. I mean, we're looking at it like over 20 years later. It was kind of panned when it came out. It didn't really turn a profit. It's actually rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got like a 52%. And I kind of think that's unfair. I actually really like the script and the cinematography and like some of the scenes, like really, I don't know. It's kind of a sleeper to me. I thought anyway.
Not to repeat something that people have kind of said all the time recently, but it's one of those things which I mean, first of all, I think a movie like this, which is like so clearly for like 7 or 8-year-olds, but also is like a real movie in live action with a competent script and plot and filming, feels like something that doesn't get made a lot anymore. Not that I'm not 7 or 8 and watching them, so I don't know if they are, but I feel like that's been taken by 3D animated films for the most part, like completely. And it's just like, you go watch like movies. I mean, like I watched The Parent Trap a year or two ago, and I was like, this actually just like looks great. Like, like nobody was mentioning that in the reviews at the time, but it's just filmed so well compared to like what we get today. And I feel like this kind of is slotting itself into that category where it's maybe is more impressive in retrospect because we feel like we've lost something of this genre.
Oh, yeah, maybe the bar has just gotten lower and lower. It's hard to say.
All right, guys, we've reached the end of Hard Ticket. It's time. It's time to pick where your Hard Ticket's going to go. And this is going to be a tough one, I feel like. I think this is a sleeper comparison, and it's kind of tough competition. I want to go with Cameron first. I want to know what your Hard Ticket's going to.
I was probably going to go to Ice Princess. And I think some of it's coming down to that's the underdog choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very funny to say I prefer Ice Princess to I, Tonya if like I'm forced to choose between them. But like as Josh said, it's a very competently told movie. It's entertaining. It's got good characters. It's got a focus on like what it's actually trying to do. So it has lots of good ice skating. I just like it.
He just likes it, folks. Jeff, we'll go to you. What's your pick?
Oh boy, yeah, man. At the beginning of this episode, I was pretty sure I was going to give it to I, Tonya, but I am going to flip-flop. I am going to give it to Ice Princess, actually, which is, I think I, Tonya is saying that it's more complex than it actually is. Because I think it does a lot of, like, it's saying it's going to be different, And then at the end of the day, it's a biopic held together by needle drops and some really great performances. And it doesn't really like it. I like it. And I loved it when it first came out. 2017 is actually a really important year for me personally in my journey loving movies. But I, Tonya, it went down in my estimation. Whereas Ice Princess, like, I love that it just kind of sucker punches you with a real scene. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I feel like I wasn't paying attention before. Should I go back and like watch what just came before this? It's silly. And I actually really do enjoy both of these movies. This is way closer than I thought it was going to be. This is weird, but I'm going to stop rambling. I'm just going to give it to Ice Princess.
All right, Josh, you, what are you going to pick? What's your hard ticket?
Yeah, I'll be the, I guess, contrarian of this episode and say that I liked I, Tonya, or I would pick I, Tonya over Ice Princess, to kind of do the opposite of Jeff and give Ice Princess its due first. I mean, I already said about it being, just interesting and competent, but I think, and it's something I was talking about with my wife after we watched this, is like the characters in it are complex, but also just like they're genuinely good and moral for a children's movie in a way that you sometimes don't. Like, children's movies can be moralistic in like a really patronizing, unpleasant way. I think this avoids that while still being very good and moral. And to kind of negatively compare a Cinderella story to it again, just because that's probably the closest thing I've watched recently to it. In our episode on that, Cameron and I, we had some issues with it being sort of, diet shaming and like classist and all this stuff. And Ice Princess kind of definitely avoids any issues like that. I think the closest it got to something like that for me is the mom starts out as a little bit of a third wave feminist stereotype, but she gets, they make her more complex without making her not a feminist, at the end.
Yes.
And I guess a lot of that credit goes to Meg Cabot, the YA author who is the screenwriter, or at least the story by on this movie.
Yes.
I'm not sure. So yeah, I really appreciated the movie, probably more than I expected to. But I, Tonya, I just think is more imminently watchable. Like it moves along in a way that's more interesting to me. I guess not to say that, you guys are adult viewers too, but like me as an adult viewer is just more interested by that. I'm uncomfortable with some aspects of, how it chooses to portray the story, but that's also art, I guess, I'm fine with being uncomfortable with that because it's the work, it's the work they wanted to make, and that makes it more interesting. And Ice Princess is a movie that, won't make you uncomfortable because that's what it's not what it's meant to be, but that's something I appreciate, I guess, in a story and kind of, I guess, where I, Tonya is getting the edge.
Wow. Okay. So we have 2 for Ice Princess, 1 for I, Tonya. If you would have told me before, like when we first recommended this matchup, I would have just said, well, I, Tonya is probably going to blow the Disney movie out of the water because it's like a real movie. It's at the Oscars. But no, we flipped the script on this one. I found it to be a much tougher competition than I thought it was going to be, having not seen either film. So I was biased going in, maybe like one of the judges in I, Tonya. I sort of looked at one thing and was like, oh, that's probably going to be better. I liked I, Tonya for the most part. I agree with you, Josh. I think it moves at a really watchable clip. The performances are great. I think Allison Janney especially is amazing. I thought Margot Robbie was also very, very strong in the role.
Yes, I think this might be my favorite Margot Robbie performance. Honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I think this was the biggest Margot Robbie film I hadn't seen yet, so I was happy to kind of fill that blind spot. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like a Black Swan kind of story, someone who kind of kills themselves for their art, which I always appreciate. I think there's something more complex there. There's something more true to life there. Again, I had some issues with the ice skating sequences. I had an issue with the tonal shift in the middle of the film, kind of turning into boys' trip to go beat up a woman, and we're kind of just making light of it. And Tonya isn't really like the center of it at that point, even though it's called I, Tonya. I felt like that's a creative misstep. And by the end of the film, even though I had more to think about, it was more skepticism towards what I had just watched, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it did kind of sour the ending a little bit for me. So I think at the end of the day, I think I got to go with Ice Princess, which is not what I expected. it's really that parking lot scene. It's the parking lot scene. Jeff, what you said about like, do I need to go back and rewatch this movie is exactly what I thought. So I watched it in 2 chunks, and I watched the first 2 acts up to the point where she gets injured and everything. And I literally paused when she was standing outside and her mother was about to pull into view to tell off her coach. And when I, restarted it this morning to finish the film, I thought I was watching a different film at that point. And you would think that would be a negative, but it actually kind of like feels like all those cheesy Disney moments, the kind of dumb golden retriever boyfriend, and the really, oh my God, some of the worst goofy lines you've ever heard in your life. It all builds up to this actual real moment of raw intensity. And it all clicked for me. It doesn't move at the same clip that I, Tonya does. It's way cheesier, less to think about for sure. But I found it more satisfying. I think I'd prefer to see it in a theater with a bunch of friends compared to I, Tonya, because I do think I'd be distracted by the face swapping in I, Tonya. So that's it. Josh, I'm sorry, you're gonna see I, Tonya alone in the theater.
Something you said there reminded me, because I'd been trying to think of this like yesterday and this whole recording. The other movie that I, Tonya really reminds me of, and that you could have paired it with, is Bernie by Richard Linklater. Have any of you seen that?
I haven't.
It's a Jack Black movie where he plays an actual man who sort of entered this relationship with this very unpleasant old lady, and then like kills her with a shotgun. But they like did interviews with the residents of the town and put them in the movie, and all the residents of the town are kind of like, well, she had what was coming to her because she was so like crabby and awful.
Oh my God.
And so it's just this like extremely black comedy about, an even much more heinous crime than I, Tonya.
Oh my God. And
it actually helped free the guy who did it, I think, because they like showed it in court and they were like, well, you have a point. So like he like lived in house arrest with Richard Linklater. So,
whoa.
Yeah. That would be worth watching and thinking about how it compares to this as well.
Very interesting. Can I change my hard ticket answer to Bernie? I want to go see Bernie now.
That'd be a hell of a theater playing all 3 of these movies at the same time. It sounds like a great double feature. I got to check that out. Oh wow, yeah. What a way this went. That I don't know if I expected that, but actually I didn't. So that's going to do it for us this episode of Hard Ticket. Cameron, Josh, thank you guys so much for joining us. Go ahead and plug your podcast one more time. Tell people where they can follow you and where they can listen in.
Yeah, we're Adaptive Difficulty. We take a look at books, although we look at things more than books, and we kind of look at the adaptations and the challenges that the adaptations face in transforming a story into another medium.
Yeah, so right now we're going through the Odyssey for over a few episodes in anticipation of, and we'll also discuss Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. So that's what we're doing right now. As far as following us, we are on YouTube and all other podcasting platforms. I have a Letterboxd, which is at JEXHAI. So feel free to look into that as well.
Yeah, you guys can follow Hard Ticket on Instagram and Blue Sky as well at Hard Ticket Pod, all lowercase, all one word. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Jeff Blogus, all lowercase, all one word. Tristan?
Yeah, follow me on Letterboxd, Tristan Moore. You can follow me on Instagram, Tristan__less. And email the podcast, hardticketpodcast@gmail.com. Send us some recommendations, feedback. If you want to join our Discord, we got a Discord. And please leave us a positive review on Spotify, YouTube, whatever you listen to.
As always, thank you, Jared Tadlock, for designing our brand elements, keeping our podcast looking fresh. Thank you, Aaron Griffin, for mixing and mastering our theme song, sung by yours truly in a truly awful falsetto. Spielberg's summer continues next week. We're going to be covering Ready Player One in conversation with Free Guy and having our good friend Scrambled back on for that episode, so you don't want to miss that. We're excited to cover it. But until then, guys, we will see you at the movies.
See you guys.
It's a hard ticket at the movies. Which one will you watch? Let's decide. It's a hard